Shalom, family. Good to see everybody here. Hope you're all doing well. We're getting 4 inches of rain in New Jersey, and I've been getting all kinds of flood warnings. That's a lot of rain from one storm. That's how much we're getting from one storm. 4 inches of rain. There's going to be a lot of places in New Jersey underwater. So, Diddy got a partial verdict today. So they are still deliberating on the rest of the charges, but look like he beat a lot of the bigger charges that was on him. Now, that doesn't mean he won't get any jail time, depending on how the rest of the verdict comes in. But, you know, I did not do a lot on Diddy. Now, back when I did videos on Diddy, it was when everything broke out in the news, and Cassie filed her lawsuit. It was around that time when I was talking a lot more about Diddy. But during the trial, I didn't really get deeply into it until it got close to the time of the verdict. Then I started looking at it a little more. So, y'all, we're going to watch a video that came out on NBC News a little earlier when the verdict came out today in New York. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can get started. Okay, y'all, please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Okay. Thank you.
The jury in the Sean Combs trial has delivered a partial verdict to the judge. Jurors say they have reached a verdict on several of the counts that Combs is facing, but have not reached a consensus on the first count. So let's get right to NBC's Chloe Malas and our legal analyst, Angela Sandella, joining me now to hear how this played out. Chloe, tell us, what are you learning from what the judge has told the court?
Hey there. So I just came out of the overflow room where I was watching a camera of Combs's attorneys huddled around him. Combs looked incredibly disappointed. He had his head down at the floor. His attorneys, actually, some of them embracing, but not looking positive, looking very stressed. They also handed him, Mark Agnifilo, his lead attorney, handed him the juror's note. And you could see Combs at one point rubbing his eyes. Right now, we know that the jurors were unable to reach a verdict on count 1, and that is the racketeering charge, the RICO conspiracy. That is the most complicated charge that Combs faces. Not only does it carry up to a life sentence, there are 8 predicate acts. Prosecutors had to prove that Combs committed at least 2 illegal activities on that list, and I'll tell you what those were. Those include kidnapping, arson, bribery, witness tampering, forced labor, sex trafficking, transportation for purposes of prostitution, and drug distribution. Yesterday we did receive a note from the jury asking about drug distribution, wanting that law reread to them. This is very interesting. They've been deliberating for almost 2 days. We know that they have reached a verdict on those other counts that you spoke of. And what are those counts? Well, those are 2 counts of sex trafficking. One when it pertains to Cassie Ventura, his girlfriend of about 11 years, who claims that Combs forced her to participate in drug-fueled sex parties known as freak-offs. Prosecutors have to prove force, fraud, or coercion when it comes to those charges. The other one pertains to Jane. Now, that is not her real name. She testified under a pseudonym. She actually dated Combs up until his arrest in September. And there are those 2 counts of the Mann Act, transportation to engage in prostitution. We heard from several escorts taking the stand. We know that Combs paid for those escorts on some of his own credit cards. And the question is, did he use company money to pay for some of those acts? Also, this is very interesting. The judge is now asking the jury to go back and deliberate. He has told them something called an Allen charge, right? Where he wants them to go back again and try to continue to deliberate. But we know from this note that there is more than one juror who is, as of right now, unwilling to change their position. Now, something that's really interesting here is that I was in that courtroom almost every single day, and I had my eyes on those jurors. And I have said all along that I did not think that they would reach a unanimous verdict on RICO. That is because during some of the testimony from the prosecutor's witnesses, remember they called 34, several of them appeared to look not in agreement with the prosecution, some smirking, some appearing to roll their eyes during different testimony. So we knew that this was always going to be difficult for them to reach a unanimous verdict. Now, when I was in there for closing arguments, Mark Agnifilo, one of Combs's a defense attorney, his lead defense attorney, delivering closings on Friday, and at one point eliciting laughter from the jurors and the courtroom. He said that Cassie is actually the winner here, that she was the one that walked away with a $20 million settlement. Remember, this all started when Cassie Ventura filed that explosive civil suit against Combs in November 2023. That was the first time that anyone had heard that she had been in a violent relationship with Combs. And during her testimony, 4 days on the stand, heavily pregnant with her third child, she testified about years of physical and emotional abuse. We saw photographs of her badly beaten over the course of her relationship. But really what this comes down to is consent. Do these 12 jurors believe beyond a reasonable doubt that Cassie and Jane were forced to participate in these freak-offs? There were damning text messages from both Cassie and Jane saying that they wanted to participate in these freak-offs. We even heard in closings from Mark Agnifilo call Cassie and Combs' relationship a great modern love story. So again, we do not know what the verdict is on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, but on one, the one that carries up to a life sentence, they are still having to deliberate on that.
And Chloe, do you get a sense that the judge will hold the verdicts and not reveal those while he is intending to have the jurors go back and press on and do more work on that count that you described as being perhaps hard? Well, we know it's hard because they've told the court they can't reach a unanimous verdict. And it's hard in part because it is the sweeping enterprise of a criminal conspiracy, not just the interpersonal conduct that some of the other counts are dealing with. Do you get a sense that they'll go right back to work today, or will they come back tomorrow? Do you have any of those sort of TikTok moments for us?
It's hard to say because, they deliberated until 5 o'clock yesterday. They have the right to keep going. We know that they don't have court on Thursday and Friday, but that potentially, they could continue to deliberate if they want to. I will tell you, this is what the judge just said. He said, can you both send me your proposed instructions, meaning from the prosecution and the defense, send to Chambers inbox, meaning their email, and we will take it from there. We have 3 options. Defense suggesting to keep going. Second proposal is some version of a modified Allen charge, right? That's to tell the jury that it is their duty to continue to deliberate. And a third option, at some point, the court advises the jury to return a partial verdict. But I don't think we're at that stage. Let me tell you something really interesting about that. This is very reminiscent of just a few weeks ago when I was at a courthouse right around the corner, but it wasn't federal, it was state. And it was Harvey Weinstein's criminal retrial. Remember, he was first tried, Harvey Weinstein, in 2017, his conviction overturned, and he was retried. And the jury could not reach a verdict on one of the women. Okay, so you had a hung on one with Jessica Mann, you had a guilty on another, and a not guilty on a third. So again, you could see the jurors sticking to their guns, saying that they are very far off here. And it sounds like it is more than one juror, but it looks like potentially today they may stop deliberating and come back tomorrow. But again, this is breaking, very significant news that they quite quickly came to a verdict on counts 2 through 5. But on that racketeering conspiracy charge, it is the most complicated. I do want to also tell you that some of Combs' family have arrived. His daughters have just arrived. He's had about 6 of his children. He has 7 total, the 7th being the youngest, an infant, at the courthouse a lot. And we saw them all there, all six of them, during closing arguments. They've been a united force. And someone that's been in that courtroom nearly every single day is Mama Combs, his mother. And just a short time ago, I actually shared an elevator with Mark Agnifilo, the lead attorney for Combs. I shook his hand. I spoke to him for a few minutes. He seemed calm, cool, and collected like he always does. And that was what he knew. What I didn't know was that there was another note from the jury, and he was making his way to the courtroom on the 26th floor of the federal courthouse right there behind me. I also just want to describe the scene for you right here in front of the courthouse. It's raining, as you can see. I'm getting drips of rain on my face. But there are a lot of people now gathered outside. I like to call them citizen journalists. They are people that are streaming all of this coverage day in, day out for the last 2 months on TikTok, on social media. A lot of influencers here. Some people are wearing free puff t-shirts. We know that one of his children actually wore a shirt saying free puff the other day when he went into the courtroom, and he's not supposed to do that, and he had to change. But again, the feeling down here, palpable. People are fascinated by this trial. And obviously, this has been over a year and a half since Cassie first filed that civil suit. And we have been waiting for this moment ever since.
In the West Village, the signs of pride share the scene with the scene of a crime. Police.
Okay. Okay, so you see they're having trouble coming up with a decision for the first charge. And I think that really was the biggest one because, like they said, he can spend the rest of his life behind bars if he's found guilty on that first count that they can't decide on. So it'll be interesting to see what they come back with. You know, this has been going on since May. I think the trial started in May. So it's got to come to an end pretty soon, you know? But yeah, I did hear about his mother being there. I spoke to Queen Amadaya. I don't know if y'all are aware. She's in New York. She's actually showing up in the courtroom and she sat in on the case. She's still there. She's been there for a few weeks now. And I might reach out to her tonight to see, what she can tell me about, what's going on in the courtroom. We can't see it because it's a federal case. If it was on the state level, we would be able to watch the whole thing from start to finish. But since it's federal, that's why you always just see composite sketches of him, and that's it. You don't really actually see him. But she last time I spoke to Queen Amadaya, she told me he's fully gray. He is fully gray. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, he's in his 50s and outside of prison, see, he was able to keep the hair dye going. He don't have access to that behind bars anymore. So yeah, now you're really getting to see what he looks like. He's fully gray. Would have some gray at 50. So no, on the federal level, they never televise it. They never do. The only time you can see it if it's like on the state or municipal level, you can see it then. But federal, they will not allow people to film any federal cases. It's always been that way. So we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll come back over the next 24 hours. It could take them a while, you know. I don't know how split they are because, they really didn't say. They just said that, there was, it could have been one person, two people that really didn't feel the same way as the other jurors. So when they reach a final verdict, we'll come back and go live, you know, but man, it will be crazy if he's found guilty. It will be crazy. I think that'll probably be the news for the rest of the week if he's found guilty. There's nothing wrong with being 54, Christopher. It's nothing wrong with that. Age is a beautiful thing. It's just that this Gentile world almost make aging something negative, or being an elder something negative, and it's not negative at all. It's actually a very beautiful thing. Look at all the things you've done in your life to reach 54, so no, that is a beautiful thing as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what this world say. Mhm. Well, Mike Lewis, you are making a very good point, because they said Cassie's, she talked about how she was abused and everything, but she was sending him text messages saying things like she couldn't wait for the next freak off. You know what I mean? That's very contradictory. You said in one instance that you were being abused, and then in another instance, it was like you were trying to run back to it. So it doesn't look good. Mhm. Yeah. So y'all, I'm 73 and I'm still hot. It comes in hot flashes, huh? Or flashes. Yeah. But there's nothing wrong with that either. That's part of the aging process. Like I said, don't let this world make you feel like there's something wrong with having gray hair, or something wrong with aging. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. And plus, look at it this way. We do it better than anyone else. And that's the truth. Look at how we can be middle-aged and still look very young. Melanin is like magic. You know what I mean? Melanin is like magic, for real. So no, there's absolutely nothing wrong, but yeah, that was disappointing to find out the stuff she was sending in text messages. It really contradicted a lot of the things that she was saying, you know. But y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for being here. I deeply appreciate it. And like I said, when they come up with the final verdict, we'll come back and listen to that, and, just get that final update on his trial. I'm sure if they don't come back the way the defense wanted, I'm sure it's going to be a bunch of appeals. Just like we saw with other cases, it'll be, multiple appeals. All right, y'all. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. I got one more premiere that is coming up, and it is on the big, beautiful bill passing. So I already got it set up. I just need to put it on for premiere, and perhaps we'll do it like around 10 or 10:30. So I will see you then. Shalom, family.